Hey everyone, happy Sunday. I hope that you are having a good day wherever you are in the world and whatever you're doing. If you had today off, I hope it was a relaxing one. If you haven't had today off, I hope you get some time to have some R&R, because I'm discovering that's kind of important. More on that later on in this video. I'm going to get to the topic of discussion first, and then I'll fill you in with a little housekeeping at the end. I want to talk to you today about babies, having babies. No, this is not a birds and the bees talk. This is what is responsible for the planet and what's responsible for our kids moving forwards. It's a thought that's really still very unpopular, but it's gaining more people accepting it as a solution to the things that we face in today's modern society. Namely, there are too many of us, we are using up too many resources and putting too much of a strain on the planet. And if we all continue to live as we currently are, then we'd need another 4 or 5 planets worth of resources just to keep us, supplied with all the things that we are currently consuming. And so is the responsible thing now for us to consciously decide to have less children? When our great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents were alive, it was much more common for people to have many more children, and the families were quite large. And that was, from a multitude of reasons, either because people didn't have access to birth control, and maybe they didn't have the same attitudes towards a woman's right to choose, although current administration and all that is kind of scary in the United States. And by the way, I'm also doing this video today because Handmaid's Tale debuts today on Netflix. Not Netflix, Hulu. And if you haven't watched it, go watch it, because it's based on a really fantastic book that is super scary. And the film or the TV show is equally good. Anyway, back to the topic of the video. So our ancestors had more children. That was primarily because obviously less access to birth control, less women's health, but also I think because children died a lot more. The death rate was a lot higher among children. Infant mortality was a lot higher. There were a lot more diseases that killed off people, and people tended to live a shorter life. The overall lifespan was shorter. That was brought down by a higher infant death rate. So the average death rate, the average age of death was lower because of this higher infant mortality. If you got to your late 20s, early 30s, you still had a pretty good chance of living a fairly long and healthy life, as long as you had access to the aforementioned healthcare and whatnot. But of course, disease was less controlled, and we had diseases that really did impact people's longevity in a way that maybe we don't have today. Long story cut very, very short, we are living longer than we've ever lived as a planet. Now, there are some pockets where people are not living necessarily as long as people are in other areas, but as a general rule, we're all living a little bit longer, and that means that we're not dying off so fast, and that means that we are putting the planet under additional strain, and any children we do have a better chance of living to old age than any previous generations. And so if we go to the idea of having 2.4 children as the standard in the Western world, those 2.4 children, or 3 children, or however many children you're going to have, it's that multiplication effect, as each generation passes down. I don't have to teach you about math or reproduction. I hope you've got that one already. If you haven't, then we're going to have some problems. But with people living longer and the population just getting larger and larger and larger, and the strain that we're putting on the planet, do we now need to consciously say, okay, families are not going to have children? I personally can't have children for medical reasons. I can't have children of my own biological children, but I have ended up adopting 2 children. So I've got 2 children that were adopted. I've got a boy and a girl. And that was the way that we decided to deal with it. So rather than have children like ask for a surrogate or something, we ended up having children adopting children. That was how we had children. And with a number of children in the world who are, without families, I often wonder if that is a better route for a lot of families. Without going into the in-depth ins and outs of adoption, it is hellish adopting children, both because of you have to deal with what the children have been through prior to coming to you, but you also have to deal with, societal reactions to the fact that you've adopted. And also, there are some specific health and legal things that come in the way and confuse matters. But, if we focus less on having babies and focus more on dealing with the population that is already in existence, it feels that we might be able to curb some of these challenges moving forward. China, for a very, very long time, China had a one-child policy, which was very unfair especially to girls, because if the child was a girl, they weren't always treated as fairly as if they were a boy. I think China's kind of relaxed its one-child policy now, which isn't helping because China's population is huge already. But we look on having children as our right and something that nobody should tell us whether we should or shouldn't do. But that is essentially our right to choose, just as our right to choose whether we buy a gas-guzzling SUV or pickup truck or whether we buy an electric one. And I think we need to start having this conversation about children and about our population and about it being okay to be childless, it being okay to be a childless individual or a childless couple. And yes, there is a biological urge to have kids. It's the reason why my wife and I chose to adopt, was because we have that biological urge to have children. But we need to talk about it in society and talk about the implications of it long term. Because I really look at my daughter and my son and I go, what kind of world are we leaving for them? What kind of world are they going to have to deal with? Right now, my daughter is a teenager. She's not really engaged in the kind of political side of things. And so she doesn't really to give a flying fart about climate change. But I know she will. And at that point, it might be too late because it will be having a direct consequence on her life. So let me know what you think in the below. Should we be making it more socially acceptable not to have kids? Should we be asking people to restrict the number of kids they have? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe and all of that goodness. And now I'm going to come back to the thing I was going to talk about at the beginning, which is just a little bit of housekeeping, really. I have been playing with the idea of going to working 4 days a week rather than 5, because I tend to work 12-hour shifts, 12-hour days, sometimes 14 hours a day when I get in the studio. I get in a groove. Sometimes I forget the time and just keep working. Sometimes it's just a lot for me to do. So I'm going to try and give myself a little bit more time off and a little bit more space. So I want to know from you what you'd like to see fill that space. The way that YouTube's algorithm works is that it's really impossible. It's really difficult to take days off. If I don't produce content every day, if we don't push content out every single day, then we have issues with our revenue. It drops. We have issues with our view count. It drops. This week's been really good. We've had a really good week. I was able to take a kind of half day off on Wednesday. I actually worked from home, which felt more like a day off, even though I was working. It was a change of environment and all that. But with my house move and everything else coming up, I'm going to be doing that more. So I'm wondering, just throwing it out there, if maybe some of you would think it would be a good idea for me to start accepting videos from some of you guys. Maybe have a competition or a showcase where you submit videos to us and the good ones make it onto our channel. Let me know what you think in the comments below. That is it for today's video. Thank you for dealing with a long, rambly one. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your weekend. And as always, keep evolving.